Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm your host, Josie Way, and co-hosting with me today is, I'm doing it again, Kathy Costa,
Yes.
Formerly Medeiros, but we know her and love her as Kathy Costa.
Thank you.
And with us, you've heard of frequent flyer. She's one of our popular guests because she does so much. She tries so many different things, and she doesn't just try them. After she's tried yoga, she goes and becomes an instructor. And they have 200 and 300 and 500 hours, and she's going for the whole shebang in the next year. But she doesn't just love what she does, she teaches what she does. And that's, it takes a lot to help your own learning. Teaching reinforces your own learning. Gets you in, and it gets you in good shape when it comes to yoga. And you volunteer at hospice and do sound therapy with the patients, sing their favorite old-time melodies, although mine might be, if I were in a nursing home, I don't know, mine might be a little more.
More recent?
Yeah, more recent, more Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, a little more upbeat.
Nice.
Yeah.
Stevie Nicks, I like that.
Sweet Dreams and stuff like that.
Your rhythmics, I like it.
What was I going to say? But recently you experienced something. Now, Kathy mentioned it to me.
It's the Renew Body Sequence.
Oh yeah, so this happened actually back in so it wasn't recent. Back in well, let's put it this way. Recently I had a full circle moment that brought to fruition when I channeled Renew Body Sequence back in 2009. So on May 8th, 2009, I was in a teacher training and I started feeling queasy, and it was when the swine flu was going around. So I was a little not sure what was up, and so because I have the Moonai Key rights, which Kathy also has, I just opened up a channel and I was just pulling in healing energy. Well, I started pulling in so much healing energy, and I had kept asking this question to Spirit. It was everyone keeps saying trust the process, but I feel like these people don't know what the process is, and it's kind of annoying that they're like trust the process, but they don't know what we're talking about. Yeah. I'm like, what is this process? So Spirit came through, and it was really Goddess, came through with this massive download, which was Renew Body Sequence. And Renew Body Sequence is a 13-phase movement sequence that moves through the life process from birth to death to afterlife to rebirth in the physical body. So what happens is within our lives, we have moments, right, where everything falls apart and it feels like it feels like a death, because even though we're still alive, our life as it is kind of crumbles underneath it, and it is a big loss, right? Most of us experience that in 2020 in some form or way, right? So it's easy for pretty much everyone to relate to now, although
because so much was changed and so fast.
Right, so it's kind of like this disintegration or fragmentation is what that phase would be called, and it's similar to dying, right? And then after that, what happens is we really quickly want to just get back. We really quickly want to just get back. And we don't want to surrender into the process.
Right.
And that is what leads to this trauma being stored in the body, because we're just trying to go back without going through the grieving process. Because what really has to happen, what Spirit, showed me, was that at this point, it's like we need to grieve. we need to let ourselves cry. I mean, I don't know about you, but I spent a lot of the last year and a half crying.
have
Just
too, yeah.
crying and crying and crying. And I never judged myself or thought like, oh, you're depressed or you need medication. No, like I just need to grieve. Like this is a grieving. As for my hospice job, the last time I saw a hospice patient in person was May 5, 2020. I haven't been back.
Oh,
So I lost
that's a loss.
a very big loss, and my marriage unfortunately ended as well after lockdown. So there's just a lot of life transitions that I've been through, and so there's just a lot of grieving. And I mean, I'm sure other people can identify this in some form of what they're going on in their lives.
It's kind of Shiva.
Yeah,
From
that
the
Shiva.
from the divine feminine.
It is that Shiva energy of everything falling apart, you know, before it comes back together.
Yeah.
So what happens
To clear the way for new stuff.
to clear the path. Exactly. So to really be in this, allow the grief, then what happens is eventually, if you use the metaphor of what actually happens when we die, we transition to this sort of pivotal, this pinnacle moment, which I call pearlized, or the gates of heaven, whatever you want to call it. But it's like, you know, when the butterfly emerges from the chrysalis and you realize like, oh, wow, and you can go, wow, there was something beautiful in that. There was something beautiful in
There
all
always
those
is.
tears, right? And it's that moment of like really being able to go, there's so much beauty in that process and in that whatever I just completed too. And then from there, again, we want to rush to the next thing, but really in that, before we can become embodied again, we have to go through the winter phase, which is when the seeds are on the ground. And during that winter, it's these two seeds which we separate back out into the feminine and the masculine energies, and they need to come back together again. So really understanding the feminine within us, which is that egg energy of just waiting and really being receptive. And that, I think, is probably the hardest energy for us to be in when we're wanting the new chapter to start. We were just talking about this, because when you're in that egg energy, you're just like, it feels like so static.
Yeah, and so long, yeah.
But to use the analogy to Hinduism and Shiva, I mean, in that, you know, thinking, Shakti is the feminine energy, and it is the dormant energy in everything. So it's everything. It's, you know, coming back to that Shakti, coming back to that primal feminine energy, and just being that of holding. And when I had this experience back in 2009, Goddess kept saying to me, like, even if it takes one day or it takes 10,000 years, like, it will happen. And that's like the whole Shakti energy is that of like, she'll wait
As long as she's needed.
one day or she'll wait 10,000 years, and it's no difference in her essence, right? Because it's all just holding. So, you know, our culture is so masculine infused. It's so much of the masculine, which in this Renew Body sequence, when we embody it, the energy is like spermy. So if you think of a sperm, the sperm is like constantly moving. It's like constantly go, 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 never stop. You know, they're just constantly swimming until they swim themselves to death. And I mean, that's what our culture basically does. Like we have this over prevalence of the masculine energy. And so what Spirit showed me was like, you know, when the two come together, you can create this like slow motion movement that feels like progress, but not frantic. You know what I mean? But it's like there's a time and place for everything. So it's like there's a time and place to be purely in the feminine. There's a time and place to be purely in the masculine. Like sometimes you just got to get your shit going and like do the stuff. You know what I mean? Like you can't be sitting when there's that time. And then sometimes, and what I came to today, it was like, you know, taking the smallest step, but with the biggest intention. It's like, you know, you can only take this little step, but you have this massive intention in that little step. And that's that like slow motion progress. And I even call it orgasmic, because it's like when we can make our actions in life actually feel that juicy, like that good, that we know like there's something coming, but we know that we can only go with this like really like good pace, you know what I mean? Like letting it be good along the way. Yeah, so, and then again, so I just kind of reviewed the fall and winter phases of the 13 phases, but when we become embodied, we then come back into, being in the womb. And then from the womb, we transition to face down, seeing the light at the end of tunnel, visioning what's ahead of us. And from vision, we are born again and again and again and again and again within the life. There's always a new cycle that we're being born into, right? So even if people don't necessarily relate to Hinduism or, rebirth, I think it's more common now for people to accept the concept of rebirth in past lives. But even if you don't, it's within this life that we're constantly being reborn.
We're constantly being offered choices and decisions to make, and what I call opportunities for growth.
Yes.
We're constantly facing that.
Yeah. So in this rebirth process, it's like this feeling of landing, right? Like when the baby lands on the ground. You know what I mean? It's like this feeling of like your head's down, you're going down. And then from birth, it's like there's this phase which I call cradled by mother, where you're really just on the floor. You can't, you can only really roll or belly crawl. Like it's a very limited movement, very limited perception, and very much relying on. So when we move through that phase, I really do use a lot of belly to earth and a lot of deep connection with Mother Earth to feel that support from Mother Earth. And then from that, we transition to crawling and sitting, because then we have the strength in our core to hold our head up, to crawl, like to actually be upright or to sit upright. And then we have this whole nother perspective where we can see in more directions and actually realize, and this is the phase that I actually call ego. And it's actually number 5 on the
hit parade.
Out of 13. So this ego phase, the way I see it, all of these phases, by the way, I have like these beautiful drawings where each phase has an expression in the physical body that you move, the emotional body, the emotion that you feel with it, the vision that you see associated with it, the thinking mind that happens with it, and then there's a color, so it's like the 12 spectrums of light plus clear light. And then there's a totem animal for each of these. So each one of these has all these layers, right? So the totem animal in ego is the puppy dog, because it's like this wagging, you're in this, you can crawl, you can sit, and everything revolves around you. The world revolves around a child at that age. I mean, it's like they cry and they drop their toy and people get it for them, you know what I mean? And like the world really, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a phase of development. But if you think of like a puppy, like I have a puppy right now, it's like if you don't train the puppy, they become a tyrant. You know what I mean? So it is with the ego. It's like we need to learn to embrace that energy of the playful puppy as an aspect of the self, love it, right? Respond to it, but not let it be our whole self, because it's only one small aspect of the self.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people like, kill your ego. Well, like, you really want to kill the puppy? Like, no, you want to kill the puppy. Like, you just want to make sure that the puppy doesn't run your house. Like,
Don't let it run your life. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, you want to love it, you want to train it, but like, it's part of you. So, killing it is kind of like
a little too much.
You might use a bad word. You might control it. But,
but you do.
You manage
discipline. Discipline. So again, this is what Spirit showed me. Then from this, playful puppy at ego, we begin to stand and we get grounded. And once we're standing, we have even a bigger perspective that we can see even more around us and start to realize, oh, it's not all about me. Like there's other things. And then when we, are able to go from standing to walking, we then do what I call dancing through life. So you're moving through all of the ability, full range of motion, everything. So I channeled this back in 2009 in the center of this wheel. So it's a wheel, and it's set up like a clock. So the phases 1 through 12 are set up like the hands on the clock, and it goes around and around. And in the center of the wheel, if you think of like the hands of the clock, what holds them in place is like a little pin that stays still, right? So that's your 0 point field. Right. So that 0 point field is where at any time, and the yogis call this the wheel, the samskara, that you're on the samskara, right? This is the external, this is being on Earth, planet Earth, we're experiencing this wheel, right? We were born into it, we experience it, and we can train ourselves at any time to go to 0 point field.
0 point.
So at any time you can jump off the wheel and go to 0 point field, and you can bring the energy of 0 point field into every aspect of it. So you can bring that meditative mindset into the whole wheel. Like, you don't have to be in that like unconsciousness. Like, as you're moving through the wheel, you can choose to be conscious and in that meditative mindset, to see it, like, kind of zoom out and see it like, oh, I'm here, like, oh, okay. Sort of in this like loving witness, detached place of like, oh, and then to be able to move it through the body. So when I first downloaded this, it was kind of scary, and I felt like a weirdo. Nobody was talking about these things in 2009, with the divine feminine, divine masculine, like 0 point field. Nobody it was like kind of like a big download, and I was like, I don't know what you want me to do with this. How am I supposed to share this? And I want to write a book. I still haven't finished it. It's like 11,000 words. Still haven't finished the book, but I started just teaching it. So I just started having workshops, and then eventually I got a copyright trademark through the Copyright Office, Trademark Office, and then I started using the format in all my classes. And the coolest thing that I love, because my studio, Joyasana, which is in Webster, Mass., which isn't too far from here. Webster's like, what, 45 minutes? 40?
I think so, from Providence, yeah.
So it's not too far. So my studio, which is in downtown Webster, we have aerial yoga. And what I've really found is to be able to come into the aerial silk and have that be like the womb, and womb yourself all curled up in there. And then to do all, 13 phases, coming out of the silk, out onto the ground, and then eventually coming back in and ending back in the silk. It kind of takes it to a whole nother level.
It really does, yeah. It's fascinating.
It's so therapeutic. So it is, I think a therapeutic form of yoga. Like you said, I actually have a degree in music therapy. It's a 5-year degree with a board certification exam. So I have worked in, healthcare as a music therapist in a wide variety of settings: mental health, nursing homes, hospice, with kids on the spectrum. So that, since 1998, so we're going like 23 years now as a board certified music therapist. So I do believe that I have the therapeutic background to, say that this is a therapeutic form of yoga. And actually, when I channeled it, I hadn't even finished my yoga teacher training yet. It was really more the idea of these movements that I downloaded, and then I was like, well, it's kind of weird, like, telling people just move like a dog, and like, you know what I mean? Like,
so you don't have that background,
You know what I'm saying? Like, or like when you get through dancing through life, which is phase 7, it's like, move like a ballerina, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like a little bit fruity for some people. So when I got my yoga teacher training, I felt like it was like, now I can say, do, tabletop pose. Like, that's something that people can connect to. And like, cow and cat, people connect to that, but it's still the same idea. It just brings a little structure to it so that it's a safer feel for people. But so I'm going to be doing a training in this in 2022 at the studio. So I will be
very exciting
opening this up to other yoga teachers to get certified as a Renew Body Sequence teacher. So if you have like a yoga teacher certification, this would be like an add-on that you can add on to your
class,
your thing. And then we're also at the studio going to be doing a 300-hour yoga teacher training. So as part of that 300-hour yoga teacher training, we'll have a module in this as well. So anybody who does that 300-hour yoga teacher training, they will also be able to stay there Renew Body Sequence certified. So it's going to be a big year for getting this expanding this finally after 13 years, right? So 98 till now, like it's like finally like growing. And I had a full circle moment. This is what you were asking about. So when this happened, again, I was in the middle of this training and I just started like talking, like saying all this stuff, and the people were kind of freaked out, right? So they like kicked me out of the training. I actually went to the hospital and they like evaluated me, and I had this high fever, and because it was swine flu, they like kind of like separated me, and they didn't want to like transfer me out. And true story. So I called my friend because I was a Christian at this point. I thought it was weird that Goddess started talking to me, right? So I called my friend who's like, Goddess, and I said, from the hospital, I said, I get it now. Goddess is talking to me. And she's like, I'll be right there. So she came, and literally it was her and another shaman and me and my mom, and it was just sat and sang. And then she looked at me and she said, okay, when they come back, you're going to tell them you want to go back home to your kids. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So they came back. They wanted to give me some like a really strong medication. I was like, oh, I don't want that. And the nurse got a little mad, but I was like, no, I'm okay. I just want to go back home to my kids now. This was after her singing to me, So the next morning, I came in totally fine. They discharged me home, and I got back home and to my kids. And my kids at the time were at preschool, so it was like going back into the preschool to take them to school. I just felt so like weird and out of place. Like here I am like channeling this stuff. I don't know what to do with it. I'm a Christian. Like Goddess is talking to me. Like I have kids that need me. I don't know what to do with this information, And it was kind of like a weird feeling. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So
it was an outfit you had to put on, and it didn't fit you quite right. It didn't feel right.
It was like trying to integrate. It was like I needed to integrate it into my life, but I didn't know how, right? So this past week, the teachers at that preschool had called me up and said, can you come teach yoga class for us at the preschool for all the teachers? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I happen to know some of the teachers. I happen to know some of the things that have happened in their lives. And so I'm teaching them this yoga class, and I'm doing the Renew Body sequence, which I, channeled back in 2009 when my kids were going to school there. And I'm teaching it to them in this class, thinking like how this could really help them in processing trauma. Because that was really the bottom line for this download, is what Spirit showed me is like, if we can move through this cycle in a safe, supported environment, we can get the cells to come back to homeostasis in the body. Mm-hmm. Because it's like you get to that point in your life cycle where you had the trauma and the body kind of doesn't want to move the right way. Stuck emotions come back out. And if we can move through those stuck emotions, if we can move through those discomforts in the body and keep staying open and curious to like hear what's coming through, we can really heal ourselves through this process. And I believe it happened for me, and I use it for myself. Like if I go take another class and the next day I'm sore, I get right back on my mat and I do this, and it's like my body feels better again,
Yeah.
So it was a full circle moment for me to be back there teaching them this sequence as if it was just
another day,
Like, here we are.
That's how you know when you're supposed to be doing something, though, when something like that happens,
right. Well, because 13 years ago, I'm thinking these people are going to think everybody's going to think I'm so weird with this 0-point field and this, channeled this thing from Goddess. Like, everyone's going to think I'm a weirdo, and like, I feel like now I have the proof in the pudding that I have 13 years of practicing it, sharing classes, testimonials from people.
And growing through it.
Yeah.
I find it interesting, 13 years, but the Renew Body sequence has 13 phases in it,
Yeah.
So I find that really interesting too.
You might find as if you go back and look at things that each year, give or take 2 or 3 months of the year, like you were embodying some portion of the year that you're going through.
That could be. I got to go back on that one because that's
Yeah.
true. It is like the 13-year mark, and now I'm finally got the.
And then 13
training
moons
going.
over years, feminine energy with the moons.
13 moons too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a lot of feminine energy with
Well,
that.
that was what God has shown me. It's like 13 is the number that was hidden. I mean, so if you think about it, it's 12 plus 0. So you have the 0 in the center and the 12. So you've got 12 spectrums of light and clear light. That's 13.
Yeah.
You have 12 sons of Israel in Israel. That's 13. You have 12 disciples of Christ in Christ.
Yeah.
That's 13. You have 12 signs of the zodiac and the sun. That's 13.
Well, there's something to it because I was busy looking up the phases of the moon and looking at the moon cycles and looking at some of the spirituality involved with them. I found myself a little more earthy,
Yeah.
even though the moon's up there, but it's a big lump of rock.
Well, the earth is considered female, so feminine
Yes,
energy, and then
yes.
the moon's feminine though too.
Yes.
So
Oh,
it's-
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of that like earthy, heavy, well, not heavy, but the earthy feeling
Yeah.
when you work with the feminine.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's a pulsing, and that was part of what I experienced too when Goddess was talking to me. Is I felt this like pulsing, and what's weird is like now I've been working with it so much. It's like I feel the pulsing like all the time. It's
Yeah.
like, I can just.
You're so
That-
connected with it, yeah.
I'm hearing, you will find that whenever you're grounded, you can be pulse. You can feel the pulsing.
Yeah.
And that's a way, if you're feeling scattered or anything like that, you won't feel the pulsing. This will be a guide for you to know that you're in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing,
Ooh, I love
if you can
this.
feel that.
Yeah, this is good. I love this. What a good talk.
Yes.
Which we've almost finished. I think we asked you one question, and you've been off and running, and it's been wonderful.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you the second question, since we're almost out of time. If someone wants to go more, like sign up for these classes or get a hold of you somehow, how
Yeah.
can they do that?
joyasana.com, joyasana.com, and it's the same thing at Joyasana on Instagram, at Joyasana on Facebook. So yeah, come on down.
A lot of good stuff today that we talked about.
Yeah, and it's not all, it's not, she doesn't have just this to offer. There are other things.
Other things, and actually the Renew Body Sequence, I do a one-to-one coaching with it, which I can actually do virtually, and I've done it with people in different states too, and it works out great virtually actually. So if somebody wants to do a virtual session, if you're not comfortable in person or if you live too far from Webster, Mass, just hit me up in a
Yeah.
DM and we'll work it out.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunities to get this received.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at Joyasana, Joyasanah.
And a brief question that I have. How have your children grown through all of this?
My children
They're-
are thriving. They're doing amazing. My oldest son got into college. He has a scholarship to Florida Tech, and he just had an interview with MIT last week. My middle son is a music producer. He has a song that's going to be on the G Herbo Deluxe, if you know rap. Big deal. So yeah, and the little ones are they're just happy-go-lucky kids. So
Yeah, they're still going to school, right? The younger ones?
yeah, well they all are. So 18, 16, and my twins are 11.
Oh, okay.
Thank you
Yeah.
for gracing us with your presence.
I love
And-
being here.
And please come and join us again. If you have trouble remembering what went on, this show will be on YouTube in a few months. So you'll be able to rehear it on YouTube.
Well, we see it though. It's a TV show though, so they'll be able to see it as well though, to not just hear it.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and the YouTube channel is it's like I call this like Spotlight of Rhode Island, it's just of RI. So you'll be able to find the channel. You can subscribe to it as well though too.
Yeah, and screen through and look up Bonnie Wallace. You'll see some of her other gifts.
Yes, yeah. I think did I bring my guitar one time or no?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
I
have to do that, though, yeah.
We weren't allowed to do that at that time.
Oh,
So,
maybe sometime.
yes,
Yeah.
that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, soothe the tired soul.
For sure.
Now, how long is the class to receive the